Hi everyone and welcome to Coast Connections. I'm Elizabeth Hines, and if you can see this, you've got power. Yay! Yay! Cheers to BC Hydro. After coming through the worst storm in almost 60 years here, they had a tremendous response to us, all of us on the coast here in the Lower Mainland. And we owe a lot to them for pulling out all the stops to get our power back on in record time, and at great risk to their staff too. So to talk us through the storm and its aftermath, we've got with us Ted Olynyk from BC Hydro. Hi Ted.
Hello.
Where were you when the lights went out?
I was at the office for all of it.
Did BC Hydro have power that day?
Actually, no, our power did go out for a bit.
Oh, okay, then it's equal.
Yeah. It was an equal opportunity storm.
Equal opportunity storm. We like that. Yeah. So Ted, this was one of the most devastating storms in terms of the number of power lines down and the infrastructure that BC Hydro lost. So I just want to sort of walk our viewers through some of these numbers because it's quite staggering. And I'll give you a chance to comment on this. But we're going to talk a little bit about the strength of the storm itself. We've got some excellent photos that you've provided from Hydro out there taking pictures at rather dangerous times. But we'll check it all out here. So by the numbers, the storm was quite devastating because of the buckets of rain that came in the days preceding it. We had about 400 millimeters of rain. So how did that affect things with the trees?
The soil became incredibly saturated and very loose for the trees and easy for the trees to come out. And when the wind hits them, the trees almost walk out as they teeter back and forth with the wind. So they basically walk out of the ground, and you'll see healthy trees along with diseased trees coming over and toppling over. You look at the big root balls and you see a very healthy tree, but because the ground was so saturated prior to the windstorm, it just made it that much easier for the trees to topple over.
Wow. And this hit on December the 20th, and it's lasted pretty much the whole day, the winds itself. And the highest winds were 114 kilometers an hour, which is hurricane force. That's a force 1 hurricane.
Yeah, the winds were incredibly strong. The pressure of the storm, you know, the low pressure of it, it was just a few millibars above a Hurricane 1 level storm. So it was a pretty fierce storm that hit us here.
And the wind also came from multiple directions, which is unusual. It kept shifting, didn't it?
Yeah, we had winds from the south, the southeast, and the southwest. And when we get winds from the southwest, those are the usually damaging winds. I mean, when you go to other parts of Vancouver Island, say you go to the west coast and you see all the trees pointing in one direction because they've endured and they've strengthened themselves because of the predominant winds that hit there. But when you have these winds coming from different directions, the trees aren't strong enough to withstand that constant pressure coming from a completely different direction. And in some areas, in Cowichan Valley, Duncan, I think, had winds from the southwest for up to 12 hours. The Gulf Islands had it for 8 hours. So that's pretty strong winds from a different direction, saturated soil, perfect recipe for a big storm to cause big damage.
And one of the reasons why it caused such big damage is here in BC, we have more trees per line, per hydro line, than anywhere else in North America. Talk to us about that.
What brings us here, you know, is the beauty of the trees and everything. In BC, we have more trees per kilometer of utility line than any place else in North America. And on Vancouver Island, we have more trees 3 times more than the rest of the province. So what can be great and brings us here can be the bane of our existence at Hydro sometimes in having to deal with the system and deal with outages because of trees coming down.
Now we've got some amazing images that Hydro, you folks have provided us showing some of the aftermath of the storm. We're just going to cue those up here in a second. But it'll just give our viewers a sense of, especially those that don't live here, just of what exactly happened there during December 20th and your amazing response to it. So here we go, Ted.
I believe that might have been Gabriola. I'm not sure of that location, but it's incredible that the damage, when you go out and you saw it before the crews arrived, you look at roads and it became forest floors, and and it almost became that you couldn't differentiate between where was the road and where the forest began in many locations. On the Gulf Islands, as an example, the Ministry of Transport told us on some Gulf Islands, 100% of the roads had trees across across the roads.
Wow. And you can't get crews and equipment in when the roads are blocked.
It's, well,
So-
we had so many trees come down in our lines, but even to get to those, there were trees blocking the roads that made it very challenging for us to get to those areas.
Yeah. And the next photo we've got too, I think, is also from Gabriola. We'll just cue up that next photo there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, Gabriola was hit quite hard. Nanaimo was hit quite hard. Gulf Islands, Duncan area, all hit quite hard. The way the storm tracked made it so devastating for the Mid-Island area. You look at areas like Whiskey Creek and Hilliers. The crews up there said it was total devastation. That what they saw up there was basically a system rebuild. And I believe there's a picture later that will show of the mountainside up there, but it was just completely devastated.
Wow. And there's another shot there too. I think that was from the lower mainland, that one, but yeah, driving in your vehicle and all of a sudden a tree comes across the road. That's very harrowing.
Well, and that's why a lot of times when we have a major storm event, we'll pull crews back. We don't want our crews to go out in harm's way and bringing a line, bringing the system back on and have it go off again doesn't really make much sense. So if winds are quite strong and debris is raining all over the place, then we'll
Safety
bring the
first.
crews on. Yes, safety is
Yeah.
very important for us.
Exactly. And good. Glad to hear that. And our next shot here, that's another devastating one of a huge tree down.
Yeah, it's again typical of what we saw, and you just think trees you would think would be extremely healthy trees just coming down across over the lines, and some places people quite lucky with the damage that happened to them, but a lot of damage because of the storm.
Here's a good one of caught right in the power line there.
Yeah, and one thing we see a lot of trees coming in contact with lines, but we'll see when our crews get there, we have reports of it. Our crews have reported it when someone has gone to do a damage assessment, and sometimes the tree is gone because we have a weekend logger that's gone there, and decided to remove the tree themselves. And that's extremely dangerous. It's stupid. You're putting yourself at harm's way because we don't know if the line is de-energized completely. The line could be re-energized as the system brings it back on. It could never have been de-energized when the system, when the line fell, it never tripped out. Or someone in the area has a generator and the generator is not wired properly so it can backfeed to the system. So we just tell people, it's not worth the risk because we'll get there and sometimes there's just little piles of sawdust. And I remember back in 2006, there was a TV crew had filmed someone backing up a pickup truck underneath the line, and he was bucking the tree into the pickup truck, and we just couldn't believe that somebody would do that.
Talk about putting yourself in harm's way.
Yes.
Yeah. And then making it even more difficult because emergency crews then have to get in there for the victims, and
Well, that's
it
right.
just compounds the problem immensely.
Yeah, and a lot of times people think it's just free firewood, and it's not. Sometimes it belongs to the property owner. It depends on where it falls and with land, but it's the property owner. They have a right to go in and help clean with that.
That's a really good point, yeah. And our next shot we've got, well, this was up in Nanaimo here, and that was one of the big, I think, red cedars that came down. Look at the size of that root ball.
Well, that's amazing to see that. And I remember in 2006, you go up to Port Alberni, the storm up there, and the way the wind tracked, and it was just like a little circle of healthy root balls you could see of trees that piled on top of each other. But it just shows, we do a lot of work with vegetation work throughout the province. We're on a 4-year cycle dealing with trees that we feel could come in contact with our lines, dealing with branches.
Yeah.
But as much as we do, sometimes, we can't cut 100 feet back to make sure trees can't come in contact. You're still going to have healthy trees that will come down.
Yeah. Carolee, can you just backtrack to that last photo of the tree that came down? Just want to show how narrowly that missed that mobile home there. The tree is completely down, the root ball's down, and it just missed the home. And that's phenomenal. Just talk about a close call. I hope they bought a lotto ticket after that. Yeah.
Well, fortunately for us too, there were no safety issues. Nobody was hurt doing the work. With all the crews involved and everything like that, didn't have any safety issues. And safety is very important for us, and we're very proud of that record.
Very good. Just want to mention there was one civilian fatality, Melissa Brenda Joe from Duncan, who had gone out to a homeless camp just as to check on some people there. A very kind act of humanitarian thing that she did.
Tragic. I heard about that,
yeah, and she lost her life to a young mother there, but left the safety of her home to check on somebody else. So our thoughts are with her family because that's a very tragic loss for them.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yes. So there's a graphic there, Carol, if you just want to go back. I just want to show the types of power poles, the spans and things. Maybe you can talk to this one, Ted.
We had close to 400 broken poles, which is an incredible amount. 700 cross arms that were damaged, and almost, I think, 2,000 spans of line. What that translates to is 86,000 meters of line that we had to repair. That's 86 kilometers, basically stringing from Nanaimo to the Malahat, or a little bit beyond. That much line they had to string. And it wasn't just an easy job.
No.
It was very difficult conditions for the crews to go in, access. Some of them had to climb the poles to do the work. Some of them had to use ATVs to get in there. It was very challenging work for them to do that.
A lot of different types of your infrastructure was lost in this.
Yes,
Yeah,
we had
wide variety. Yeah.
poles down, poles broken. In this storm, what made it, normally when we deal with a storm, you would just have a branch come into contact with a line, and you know, typical winter storm, and there'd be maybe an hour or two for the crews to go in and deal with it. But in this storm, we had not just a branch, we had the whole tree on the line, and the tree took down the line and took down the pole, and made it quite challenging.
Wow. And so you had 900 field workers out there, an unprecedented number. Also had people come from the East Coast to help us here on the West Coast, which is lovely, and workers from Alberta as well. But these crews were amassed in, you know, very short order. And there was, at the height of the storm, I think, Ted, there was 750,000 people without power in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island, the Fraser Valley area. And 70, I think 80% of us were restored within 24 hours.
The storm hit the Lower Mainland quite hard as well, and that's what made it challenging for us to bring customers on as quickly as we wanted to in some of the more remote areas on the island. Usually when a storm will track, it may track, say, Whiskey Creek, Coombs area, Parksville area, or the Gulf Islands, or Cowichan Valley. But this storm basically hit Vancouver Island and the Fraser Valley from Courtenay, Camel River, all the way down to Victoria. So we had to, our crews in their home district had to restore their power first in those areas, and then we could bring crews over. So that delayed, which would normally be a quicker time, because we had to make restorations in the Fraser Valley and the Lower Mainland as well. But as soon as those crews became available, we brought them over here. We brought crews down from the interior. We had crews who were on holiday break because it was Christmas season. They called in and said they want to come down and help. It's a real close-knit working group within Powerline technicians. They called in, they want to say, we'll come down, we'll do that. We even had brought in crews from Alberta, and crews from the East Coast came out to help as well.
Fantastic. And I know the public response to the crews has just been overwhelming. Salt Spring Island, where the power was out the longest, in fact, it went through Christmas Day right up until, I think, December 31st was when they were restored. But they actually put on a Christmas dinner for the hydro workers
and they
there.
It was great throughout the whole island. There were people bringing food to our crews up in Qualicum area. When we had our meals catered to feed the crews on Christmas Day, they had some kind of Christmas dinner meal. They flipped over the covers on their little tinfoil packages, and the staff at Tinamera had all signed them a thank you on each hot meal cover, and it was great. The crews are really touched to see that. I know a young mother with her 2 children brought in some goodies at the Nanaimo office, the emergency center, and brought a card and some cookies and some food into their park, as I mentioned, and you mentioned, sorry, in Salt Spring Island. Just incredible amount of food and generosity shown to the crews, and it's just heartwarming. And you pick up coffee to bring out to the crews, and it was cold, and you'd get your Timmy's box, and people had signed the Timmy's box as well when they realized it was for hydro crews. So and it made a big difference. I was out in Yellow Point, and somebody had brought chicken wings and some nachos to the crews out there, and the crews weren't from the island, they were from the Fraser Valley, and they couldn't believe the island generosity that people, like, you've been out of power for how many days and you're bringing us food?
That's wonderful.
It was great.
It's wonderful that this disconnection of power really helped to connect people. And it's a beautiful thing. Good things can happen out of really bad storms, as you've demonstrated. So in terms of forecasting or tracking the storm, Ted, do you have in-house meteorologists who do this?
We have our own in-house meteorologist, I mean, to help with storms, but also because of our dam facilities, we need to track when rain comes in. We have Pineapple Expresses that will come in, and we want to make sure we can release the right amount of water. That also helps us with tracking storms when it comes to possible damaging storms to our infrastructure. We also contract out, and we have a contractor that'll provide information to us, and we'll look at that. At the end of the day, it's up to Mother Nature. We have some idea where the storm's going to come in. We're pretty good about precipitation hitting our facilities, but the exact tracking of a storm, at the end of the day, it's up to Mother Nature, and we just will go in there and make the repairs after she's done.
And your response time was incredible. I think I read that there was 5,800 work orders or tickets taken out, and that's about a 25% increase than an average storm that BC Hydro responds to.
Yeah, and that's the challenging part when we have it. It's just the amount of trouble orders. That's responding and making sure that power comes on for that group of people. One trouble order can be 2,000 people with a feeder, or it can be 1 or 2 people on that trouble order. It still can take the same amount of time depending on what we're dealing with. A pole on a line can bring out power to 2 people, it can bring out power to 2,000 people. And when we're near the end of a storm, that's what delays, you know, it's slog. The easy work, not say the easy work, the bigger numbers are brought on first. That's our priority system. We'll bring on the most customers we can at one time. I mean, it's like clearing the roads when it snows. You're going to start with the Trans-Canada Highway, then you work on to the major bus routes, the major arterial routes, the emergency vehicle routes, then you'll get to the cul-de-sacs before we can you see their power restored.
It's almost like a triage.
It is, and it's and that's the only way that you can approach it. But first and foremost, of course, is safety. When we see a down line, we always ask our customers to call 911. That's something we learn. We have to work better with municipalities and some first responder areas to make sure that everything is understood. It's a safety issue when a line is down on the ground. It can be energized, as I still mentioned, and we always tell people stay away from the line. 10 meters, about the length of a city bus, stay back that far from a line because you don't know if it can be energized, and the ground around you can be energized as well.
Now, I think there's a myth that if I'm in a car, I have rubber tires, I can drive over this. Let's dispel that right now.
People, yes, we saw that too many times. That people would drive over a line, or people even assume that a line you could just pick it up and move it to the side of the road, or no. Call 911. They'll get in touch with us. The line will be reported that it's on the ground, and we'll attend to that. That's something we know. It's one of the lessons learned, of course. Coincidentally, we were working with municipalities prior to the storm to try and having discussions about storm prep or everything like that. We're always analyzing any major event we have. I mean, to go back and what do we do well? What can we improve on? And making sure that we work better with local government to make sure that high access roads, arterial roads can be cleared for emergency vehicles. And it doesn't matter about restoration so much. It's just that emergency vehicles can get in there and they can do their work that they need to do.
And with climate change upon us, these types of storms and the severity of these storms are going to become our new normal, I think. And Hydro, I think you reported that in the period of 5 years between 2012 and 2017, the number of these outages and storms has gone up 273%, which is staggering.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a byproduct. Of climate change, that we're going to see more of these storms and more devastating storms like this.
So what are some of the things that we as consumers can do to prepare for weather events, extreme weather events like this?
I always tell people that the storm events are really just a snooze alarm. As big as this one is, we live in a high earthquake area.
Did you say snooze alert?
A snooze alarm, yeah.
Snooze alarm.
It's just to let us know. I mean, you have to make sure you're prepared for any major storm event, for a power outage, for whatever reason. But we live in a highly seismic area. And it's not a question of if the big one's going to hit. It's a question of when. And are you prepared? When the big one hits, some areas can be without power, not just a few days, it might be a week or two before you see your power restored, and that could be a major urban area because of the damage. So always be prepared. Make sure that at the end of summer, that's always a good time to maybe refresh your kit. If you don't have one, it's important to have one. Can you withstand going without power for 3 days, for a week? Make sure you've got fresh batteries for a flashlight, a radio. Do you have a backup charger for your cell phone? Do you have the medication you need? Does your pet have food? There's great information at the BC Hydro site. You can go to Emergency BC and there's information there how to prepare for it, but everybody needs to be prepared.
Yeah. Do you have a kit at home, Ted?
I do, and I'm sure there's a few things I could refresh in it, but I do have a kit.
Some expired chocolate bars in there, perhaps, from last Halloween?
Well, the chocolate bars don't usually last that long.
Very good, yeah. So another one of the things that Hydro is really good about is informing people when there's going to be work done in their area and the power is going to be turned off. So let's talk about a little bit of preventative maintenance, what you folks do to maintain vegetation so when these weather events, it doesn't come, the trees aren't coming down on your lines.
Right. We live on the West Coast, and so the deal is we're going to get big storms that come in the Pacific. I mean, that's so a lot of the resorts over there, they do quite well during storm season because people come out there and want to see the mighty Pacific and the force of Mother Nature come in. But we want to make sure that we lessen the impact on our customers. We know we're never going to eliminate outages completely. What we hope to do is lessen the impact on them. That's the frequency of a storm, or frequency of an outage, the duration of an outage, or giving our customers the information they need so they can make plans to find alternative shelter, or if they have to go out, eat out somewhere because they realize they're not going to have power for a couple hours or a couple days. So that's always important. And we're doing regular maintenance. We're hardening the system, putting in infrastructure that brings the power back on automatically in some areas. It might be just a branch that went on the line and came off, so we have reclosers that will bring the power back on. We've hardened the system to have longer loops that can feed an area, so we can isolate an outage and then it can be fed from another area as well. And we've really improved with technology our communication to our customers. Of course, the best communication is you're going to be repaired just at this time and it's going to happen exactly at that time, or there's no outage. But unfortunately it's going to happen. But customers can go to bchydro.com. They can get information on their cell phone. We have a mobile site, and we're trying to update that and finding ways we can improve that. Twitter, we have lots of feed on social media with Twitter and Facebook, advising customers what plans they can, when their outage is going to be fixed and when their power is going to be restored.
Very good. You're very progressive that way in terms of keeping up with technologies and always trying to improve your communications as well.
Well, not just our crews working out there. We have the digital media team in Vancouver that works almost 24/7 in a major storm event, and they're out there as well, making sure, taking information from customers, reporting things, passing that on to crews. So that's been a great addition to our restoration efforts.
Now, Ted, in terms of other jurisdictions coming here to help BC Hydro, does BC Hydro in turn go to other areas as well to help with severe storms?
Yeah, I believe we've sent crews to other areas. I think we helped out in Washington State at one time.
I recall that.
Yeah. But this is the first time in my long time at Hydro now, almost 20 years on Vancouver Island, that we've brought crews in from out of province to come to Vancouver Island to fight a storm. So that just shows and is evidence of how severe this storm was.
How severe it was.
Yeah.
And one of the places where it was most severe, where the winds reached that 114 kilometers an hour, was the Leonard Island Lighthouse.
Oh, yes.
If you've ever walked on Chesterman Beach and looked out there, there's at Tofino, you see the lighthouse out there. Well, I reached out to Caroline Woodward, who's the lighthouse keeper there, and I said, hey, how was it for you? Like, they were right at the top of the list for the highest winds. And she just sent an email. Now, Caroline and her husband Jeff are one of only 27 staffed lighthouses along the coast, and they sort of took a direct hit from this. So I just want to share this email from the lighthouse keeper. It was truly wild and the gusts were unbelievable. We made it over to the radio room and to the boat dock observation points, and then taking great care with doors so as not to squash ourselves or the dog. We watched the anemometer, the wind speed indicator, which is connected to the equipment on top of the lighthouse tower itself. Other than checking roofs and basements of the 3 houses and making sure no other obvious signs of storm damage had to be dealt with, none thankfully, we had to keep focused on our own safety, getting to and from the lookouts in order to give the wind direction and speed, visibility, wave and swell height, etc., to the Coast Guard radio operator in Prince Rupert, who collects the weather information from half the BC lighthouse keepers. The great danger to light keepers during big storms are flying objects, especially in the dark, which means 4 out of the 7 weather collection times, because they're collected every 3 hours, during the nighttime hours as well. And then destruction to federal property, which the light keepers also need to fix, if at all possible, as no helicopters or lifeboats can bring skilled tradespeople in under these conditions. So they were really on their own out there in this thundering storm. And that's the worst storm that they've recalled in their light-keeping history as well.
Wow.
So again, they're safe and sound, and the lights were on. The generators that they had there kept the lights going for the mariners. So yeah, good to know that. So Ted, any closing thoughts before we wrap this up, before any storms hit the studio here?
We appreciate our customers' patience in this. We realize it was a very trying time. It's not there's never a good time for an outage.
No.
Certainly during the Christmas season, but it's just the understanding and appreciation and patience that our customers had is just, Cruz talked about that. When they came in for their Christmas dinner, they were, exchanging stories, and you hear about it and you talk to them, and like, yeah, they came out, and like in Banfield, somebody came out and said, this isn't an emergency, this is just an inconvenience. And I guess it all depends on maybe how old you are and where you live. Maybe if you live in a large urban area, you might be without power for a while. Everything's connected, and it makes it challenging. But it's always about being prepared. The more remote you are, the more prepared you are. But it's a reminder to all of us that you never know when it's going to happen, and are you prepared? Very
good. Thanks again, Ted, to you and all the whole crews there at BC Hydro, and to our friends in Alberta and the East Coast who also helped us out during this storm. So it's so nice to have power to the people back again, and it's great to be connected. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here on Coast Connections. We hope your power doesn't go off anytime soon either. See you next time.